Even like, $1, 2, $3 million homes, GCs are oftentimes flying by the seat of their pants when it comes to the money. If you swipe a card, for instance, and then you get back in your truck and you head back to the job site, the receipt is in the cup holder. You got 2 other projects you're working on, you're driving back and forth, and at the end of the day, even the end of the same day, you don't know what project that receipt really went to. Completing projects more quickly is probably going to help your bottom line more than trying to play little games, optimizing cash and payment terms. At the moment, construction estimates are slop. AI is very good at producing that, and it's a great fit. Hopefully in the future, AI will help us produce better estimates. Fantastic use case for AI, because estimates it's an art. It's not a science, and it's often BS made up on the back of a napkin. And, it's always serves as a very useful baseline, doesn't always serve as an actual prediction of where the project is going to end up.
Welcome back to Constructive. Today I've got Nicholas from BuildPlus. Go ahead and just introduce yourself. Give me a little bit of a background. I want to dig into your whole career history, but tell me who you are and what you're working on now for now.
Thanks, Seth. My name is Nicholas. I'm a co-founder at BuildPlus and started in this industry back in 2015, actually, as a subcontractor. So I was working as like a metal fabricator. After studying architecture, computer science, art, I was kind of all over the place, but I discovered I really liked building. I really liked being on the ground and kind of being responsible for, for an end product. Kind of fast forward, I ended up at as part of a really cool team at Ennead Architects, which was formerly Polshuk in New York. And I was working as a BIM manager. So I got to see a lot of different projects, got to do a lot of really cool modeling and kind of consulting on different kind of types of projects. And then kind of kept going towards the technology side, ended up working at Ladybug Tools on their pollination product, which was super awesome. Kanoa, which was kind of like an online CAD tool with a integrated marketplace for circular furniture procurement. And then in 2024, my partner, Brian Hopkins, and I started BuildPlus. So he was actually the director of the Ennead Applied Computing Group. So he was my boss there, and now we're partners in BuildPlus.
I assume, and I think we talked before this about this, but I assume there was a pain point that you discovered that kind of was the catalyst of...
Well, yeah, there were a bunch of pain points. Brian, prior to 2022 or 2023, started a construction management architecture design build firm, and his first big ground up like custom home project, the builder actually went bankrupt on them during the project. And then later he had other issues with his bank, and just payments in general in construction are such a pain. And at the same time, he was doing some really interesting things using Cost Plus to deliver projects and tracking all expenses using Airtable, and using some cool plugins for Airtable that were like bringing in his banking transactions. And he was kind of like using that to deliver Cost Plus projects in a really transparent way. And so all of those, pain points and kind of processes that he was working on were really interesting to me. And we turned it into a product that is now called BuildPlus.
That's cool. I've always been an advocate of more transparency in pricing in our industry. It's just a hard thing. There's a lot of pushback from every side. How do you help people understand that transparency is a good thing?
Well, it's definitely something that we're still working on. But we find that there are some people who just get it. And there are a lot of people, like you said, who need more explanation. I think there are a ton of benefits on all sides of the equation. But at a base level, it really is just about aligning all of the different parties to produce the best project possible given a budget. And I think if you actually get down to it, when you start talking to people on construction sites, especially, projects that are going relatively well, everybody is already in that mindset. The contractor, the owner, any consultants, the subcontractors, everybody really does want to provide the best work possible. I find that people in the field always, I felt this way when I was doing the metal fabrication stuff. You really take pride in your work. It's a very fulfilling kind of work. It's definitely very difficult, but you do want to provide the best product possible, given the fee, given the amount of money you can make at the end of the day. So it's always just about finding that balance. And if you can make everybody understand that they're on the same team, then I think the project just kind of runs much more smoothly. So yeah, it's really about just kind of aligning incentives. But, more concretely for the GC, the motivation there is pretty clear. If they're using cost plus, then they're guaranteed profit. The kind of catch there is they're expected to be much, much more transparent and accountable to the homeowner. It's more onerous in terms of paperwork, documentation. But I think, like I said, the benefits are huge. For the owner, they have much more control over the quality of construction and kind of like the trajectory of the budget and where the project's going to land at the end of the day. So I think for us selling to homeowners, it's been very easy. This process kind of sells itself because very, very few people do this, especially in like the kind of high-end home construction, custom home market. People don't operate with this level of transparency. And even like, $1, $2, $3 million homes, GCs are oftentimes flying by the seat of their pants when it comes to the money. And, we want to enable them to provide a much better service to their customers. Yeah. So we're basically providing tools to enable that.
Right. I find too in business, at first you wouldn't think so, but I think even the owner or the buyer in any case, we don't mind if people are making a profit on us. It's just about knowing what that profit margin is to some extent. Do you think that really helps people be like, yeah, I want the contractor that builds my house to make money. I just want to know how much, I guess.
Yeah, that's a huge sticking point. Actually, more on the GC side. They don't like to expose their profit margin, understandably, because then that becomes the topic of the negotiation, which is uncomfortable. What I would say to homeowners is you want the GC to be making money. Because like I said, you don't want your GC going out of business or, filing for bankruptcy 3/4 of the way through your project. And now we're starting to work with some developers and people doing, 30 plus unit developments. And, when you get to number 20, home number 20, the GC better still be in business. So you don't want to be constantly cutting their legs out from under them and, hurting their bottom line. Yeah. So, I think that's kind of the message to owners. And I think if you can get them there, then the GC shouldn't have any issue actually just kind of honestly saying like, yeah, I am making 15, 20% on this project. And I'm going to provide a great service. You're going to know where we stand at every step of the way. And this is, you look at any piece of the building, that's what I'm making. I'm not marking up I'm not marking up the tiles 300% just because, I can, because it's opaque. You know how much the tiles are costing, and you can buy nicer tiles. You can buy bigger tiles if you want to reduce labor costs. But at the end of the day, I'm still making the same percentage on every single aspect of this building.
Cool. Another big topic that I feel like we should address, and I'm sure you want to, is just cash flow from a construction project standpoint. Maybe we need to talk through like features of BuildPlus 2 in here, but I think a lot about even just like stuff in this industry, like pay when paid, where subcontractors get burned if the GC doesn't get paid and doesn't want to pay downstream. But I also think about just the difficulty of keeping a healthy cash flow as a contractor or anybody on a construction site. Are you guys addressing those issues for people in construction?
Yeah, so definitely. So our system is based on like an accrual accounting model where the GC can set up expenses that haven't been paid yet, but that will still be recorded as expenses on the job, and then bill for those so that they can, have that cash when it comes time. Now, on our projects, since like I said, we are right now focused on this sort of custom home market, advocate for our GCs on our platform to take a healthy deposit at the beginning of the project, which can really help keep cash moving. What we do is we record that deposit sort of separately, like from the project kind of revenue. And as the project progresses, the GC can actually apply that deposit on later invoices so that they're kind of drawing down on that as the project progresses. But yeah, no, cash flow is a huge issue. And just like being able to kind of bill in advance or have those expenses show up in the budget ahead of cash moving is really, really important in any kind of like, solution like this.
Do you think
like you said, it's a reality of construction. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. Do you think payment terms really matter too? I do, especially in terms of timing, like the net 90, net 180 type stuff. Like, are you into that side of it?
So I definitely do think it matters a lot. And I think that there are a lot of optimizations and a lot of games that you can play there. For instance, like in Build Plus, so the way Build Plus works is every project is its own business bank account in the GC's name, and they earn a deposit incentive. It's a lot like interest on that money that they're holding, and if they can hold money longer, then they earn a little bit more. Now, it's not a huge amount, so depend like your mileage may vary, I guess, but there are tons of games that you can play. That being said, our sort of model is all based on, project money moving quickly to move projects faster. And so, it's not something that we've spent a lot of time optimizing for. Like I said, like there are tons of ways that you can play those games, but I think that at the end of the day, completing projects more quickly is probably going to help your bottom line more than trying to play little games optimizing cash.
Yeah, I
And
just
payment
like to
terms, yeah.
theorize about this stuff, so I feel like you might be a good person to ask this question too, but can't we someday come to, I don't know what it would look like, but I want net zero. Like I want everybody to be paid for the work that they're doing when they do it.
Yeah.
You talked about accrual based. Like, yeah, I just think, is there a future where maybe even AI can help us, but where money exchanges hands always at the right time and everybody gets paid what they deserve? Like, is that a future we can get to?
I mean, that's definitely the way we operate. And like I said, we really like moving money quickly. We really moves jobs much more quickly. Subcontractors love it. They're much more motivated to work, to be responsive to your schedule. Now, of course, there are caveats there. Like you can't overpay anybody, and you don't want to pay anybody prematurely. So you need to have some controls in place. We do a lot in terms of tracking payments against subcontracts to make sure that you always kind of know how much you owe a subcontractor and how much, what the right next payment installment is. And then the general contractor who's actually dispersing these payments has to be on site and responsible for making sure that the subcontractor does their work, that lien waivers are collected appropriately. But all of that, all of that due diligence having been done, yeah, we advocate just dispersing that money as quickly as possible to keep the project going. And like I said, if you're doing more work, if you're completing projects faster, your bottom line is going to benefit. So, much more than playing games with cash flow. So like I said, accept a big deposit up front if you can, and disperse money quickly, keep the project moving. I totally am on the same page about that.
Do we need accountants still?
I mean, absolutely. Like the world of construction accounting and construction finance is incredibly complicated, and necessarily so. Like, one really interesting problem is when it comes to lending, when a bank is going to give you a construction loan, they're giving you a loan against something that doesn't exist yet. So there's a really high degree of risk there. And the processes that banks use, so it's an interesting thing because the processes that banks use to kind of disperse the money, I mean, in a sense, it's pretty rudimentary. They kind of, and very human based. So, I mean, if you're talking about AI, I think this is something that could maybe benefit from AI, but observing a job site and kind of estimating a percent complete from what a person or a set of photos displays about job completion. That's basically how banks do it. So they're like, we've been on site, we see that you need to we see that you've done 30% or the framing is complete, so we're going to disperse this draw to you, which like I said, it's a little bit rudimentary. The way that we track project progress in BuildPlus is by money spent. And we find it actually does do a pretty good job tracking with what a bank kind of estimates on site. Now, obviously, it's a little bit like the tail wagging the dog if you have the bank using that as their ground truth for dispersing loan draws, but I think it's a very valuable tool for all parties to see a kind of percent complete as a money spent versus what our projected spend is on the project. And I think that actually, eventually we really want to use that as a kind of as a tool alongside or married with photos. So, you kind of can have job site, like for projects. One of our biggest users like just has Apple Photos albums for all of their projects that they share with the client. And that's kind of a feature that we're looking to build into BuildPlus, where you can actually marry the financial data with the photos, and then can like use that to kind of help potentially train a model to estimate job site progress from those photos.
I feel like I didn't give you this opportunity maybe at the beginning. I should have, but talk me through like when you see kind of an ideal customer, what those initial conversations look like. Are contractors or people in the industry coming to you and saying, I have this problem, can you solve it? And what is that problem usually? And how do you talk to them about solving it?
So we have a few different ideal customers, and we're kind of at the beginning stages of like kind of figuring out exactly who that is, who those ideal customers are. But we are collecting a ton of problems that we're able to solve, and it's really exciting. For instance, just a couple of days ago, we spoke with a developer who we're hoping to work with, that on a previous project, I think it was a 23 lot development. Halfway through the project, all of a sudden, all of the subcontractors came to them and started asking for payment directly from the developer because the GC wasn't paying them. So, that and so for us talking to them, it's, you should be using a system like BuildPlus with your GC to build trust, to ensure accountability. We don't, like I said, we don't want to, it's a give and take. There's something that you need to give this GC as well, which is, you need to make sure that they're making money. But if they're amenable to working in this open book way, then you can, ensure financial success in your project. So I think that it really is about creating a collaborative space for GC and homeowner or developer, and for developer and GC to work together. To deliver a project kind of collaboratively. Yeah. So I think that's one really concrete example, but we have a ton of like, stories like that, like people just saying like, look, like I initially said, like GC's going bankrupt on projects. Like, it's not the difficulty. What I would say is the difficulty for us in this is that general contractors have this issue because they haven't invested in solving it yet. And so we need to kind of like educate clients and general contractors that there is a better way to run these projects. And I think that, a lot of folks that I've talked to who use Cost Plus on bigger projects, I think a lot of this is done on bigger projects actually, have really positive things to say about that model of development. And we're, really inspired by like integrated project delivery and target value delivery and like ways of doing projects much more collaboratively. So that's kind of the pitch. And it's just kind of convincing people that this is, because I think like, as as your listeners know, construction is very vast and it's very siloed. So even something that is, a standard practice, even something that, the AIA has many different templated contracts for Cost Plus, NAHB has Cost Plus contracts on their website, it's still not like totally seen as an accepted best practice by everybody in the industry. So, and obviously it's not the only way of doing projects. There are a lot of other good ways to do projects, but the idea of working collaboratively is kind of the main selling point for us right now. And then on the GC side, we provide a ton of really great tools because like we need to make this attractive to the GC. So like I was saying, like, every project is a business bank account. We provide, debit cards with like cash back that they can spend down that balance and still get cash back for their purchases. We allow them to use their own credit cards and ingest those expenses. There are a ton of great tools like the subcontract tracking, budget tracking, ton of great tools on the GC side to make their work easier. So this is really a tool kind of geared towards, like a lot of the features are geared towards making a GC's life easier, but the transparency, collaborative project delivery, like that all, the benefit of that really accrues to the homeowner or developer at the end of the day.
I think that's what it's all about. At least for me, I think we as an industry have to serve the client. So I feel like even if, it makes our profit margins a little bit thinner, I think at the end of the day, if we want to stay in this industry, if we want to keep building stuff, we have to make things better for the owner. So I'm glad to hear that that's the focus, is like bringing these benefits I think it's
Yeah.
about serving the project too. That's how I always think about these things, is like, I don't just want to build this school. I want to help the kids have a better place to learn.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But I wanted to ask you this, like, we've talked a lot about like how this helps and what it adds to a construction project. I'm curious if you've also been hearing like using Build Plus allows people to eliminate workflows that were annoying or bad. What
Yeah.
is
So
this eliminating the need for?
yeah, so just before that's a great question. Before I get into that, let me just say we're not trying to like shave GC's profits at all. In fact, we really see it. Like I said before, if the GC isn't making money, if the GC isn't making money, then you're not serving the project well. To your point, so
Fair.
and I really do think that GCs and subcontractors, everybody working on site really does have that perspective where they really want to like serve the project well, serve the kids, and serve the end users well. For by and large, but in terms of workflows or work that we're eliminating, we've had so this project that's in my background, it's like a three home mini subdivision in upstate New York, and we've heard both from the general contractor and from the architect on the project, who are both kind of involved with BuildPlus to some extent, mostly the general contractor. But we've heard from both of them that it's eliminated client questions on the budget almost entirely, which is kind of like they love. It's huge, so they're not getting a lot of upset customers when, on this project, for instance, there was a lot of rock hammering. The clients, let's just say there's a lot of rock hammering that was unforeseen on the project, and it increased the budget quite a bit. But, we were able to explain why that was needed, how it impacted the budget, and, it kind of allowed everybody to move on, like I said, in a collaborative way where the clients trusted that the general contractor was working in their best interest despite the fact that the budget was increasing.
It's a really good point because, I mean, especially on bigger commercial projects too, I feel like a lot of time is eaten up by back and forth on billings or invoices. Like, what does this mean? What is that line item? We need more detail here. You need to break this out. You're finding that's getting eliminated a lot.
Well, so I'll say that work still exists. It's not...
Sure.
It's like that work isn't going away. What we can do is make it a lot easier to do that stuff.
Yeah.
So, for instance, every time there's an expense incurred on a project in BuildPlus, whether it's coming in from a linked account or you're paying out of the project account, we call it a project wallet, that expense is automatically added to a invoice or a pay app and your project ledger and the budget. So that's always kind of tracked in real time. And that was like, you talked about the motivations for BuildPlus. We had a lot of different ideas for how we could do things in this space, but early on, we realized if you want somebody to be attributing expenses back to the budget, back to subcontracts, back to invoices as easily as possible, you really have to do that when payment is being dispersed. Because if you swipe a card, for instance, and then you get back in your truck and you head back to the job site, the receipt is in the cup holder, that it's very hard to get backup documentation for that back to the invoice at that point. You got two other projects you're working on, you're driving back and forth, and at the end of the day, even the end of the same day, you don't know what project that receipt really went to. So, we wanted to move the point of tracking that expense as close to dispersing the money as possible. So that was kind of the motivation for integrating payments into into BuildPlus. So like I said, we're not eliminating the work, but we're making it much, much easier. We are working on ways for AI to be able to automatically do some of this stuff, like associate receipts with expenses or associate expenses with budget scopes of work, pull out payment terms from subcontracts, these kinds of things that, our owner is to parse. Yeah. So we, like I said, that work still exists, but, it's making it easier on the human side and then automating it using AI. That's really the main application of AI for our business. Yeah.
It's cool. For some reason, this keeps making me think about budgeting in my personal life because early on, when cash was always a problem for me, even just looking at my bank account would give me anxiety. So I would just avoid like opening that app or whatever, or like paying bills. It was always like anxiety
Yeah.
driven. And I imagine that a lot of contractors have that
Yeah.
constantly with their business, where
That's a
it's
great
like, I
point. Yeah.
don't even want to think about the accounting or the finances of this because I'm going to get a ton of anxiety. Is that something you're finding you can help contractors with?
I think that's a fantastic point, and actually not something that I had articulated that way before. We're always talking about the experience of the relationship and building trust and reducing anxiety in that relationship between the GC and homeowner. But I think you're absolutely right that if a general contractor can work in a way where they always know where they're at. So actually, like, this is actually really interesting. So we spoke to early on, we spoke to a GC who's been just kind of like, we've worked with him since the very beginning of BuildPlus. And, he talked about taking project money and spending it to go to Disney World with his parents, hypothetically talking about it with, as something that general contractors might do. Or, maybe even more realistically, using project money, money for project A on project B, and kind of just always kind of rolling that ball forward, almost like a Ponzi scheme,
Well, we call it
where you're
robbing
always
Peter to
behind.
pay Paul,
What's that? Yeah,
It's
exactly.
called,
Yeah.
yeah, robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Exactly. So for us, that was one of our huge motivations for creating these segregated project accounts. So these project wallets. So in Build Plus, like I said, every project is its own business bank account, and you always know the balance. So when you start to get low and you start to say, oh, I'm not going to be able to pay myself for this invoice, then that's when you need to, issue a new invoice to the client. And you can always see where those invoices are at. So you always have a current invoice that's accruing expenses. This is, if it's a cost plus job, this is kind of the way it works. And then you issue that invoice to the client, and then they pay it, and you top up that balance. So you're, like I said, you're never borrowing from one project to pay for another. You always know how much is available on each project. And we also in Build Plus, we establish like an operating account for the GC. So if they do need to pay project expenses, either from that operating account or more often from a credit card, and then reimburse themselves from the project either now or in, after an invoice has been paid, that's always possible. So, that stuff happens, but we want GCs to be going out of pocket as little as possible, and always knowing how much they have left for a project. So yeah, I totally like that. Like, as an emotional reality for a lot of GCs, not knowing what they have for a project is very real, and just eliminating that, I think, could be a huge weight off their shoulders.
I started my career in what I call the forensic niche of construction management. So working for attorneys on construction related court cases, figuring out who screwed up for how much money, and kind of backwards engineering a lot of times the financial problems of a project. So I've seen how easily that stuff can go sideways. I bet your goal, and I bet Build Plus is already proving to be this, but not only a good documentation tool so that if something does go wrong at the end of a project, you can have a good history of it, but I bet you're also trying to prevent like us ending up in the court system for a financial reason. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like I said, we do want to operate. We want our GCs to operate with a very high degree of accountability. And, we found when issues do arise, because things happen, expenses are misclassified occasionally, and, you need to correct it. We provide a ton of ways to provide credits back to the owner. Even, like, very, very rarely, you might need to send a little bit of money back to the owner. And, working in a transparent way with this high degree of accountability, if an issue does arise and you have the means to correct it, it builds trust, like, hugely with your customer, with your client. So yeah, definitely, number one, prevent any issues. Number two, have ways to correct them. And if you can do that and communicate clearly about it, then you're going to just kind of improve that relationship every time. So yeah, I totally agree. We want to keep out of any kind of court related issues. Number one issue, number one desire for any GC is stay out of the courts, for sure.
You kind of just mentioned AI, but I want to broadly talk about what your dreams are about the future, maybe for your own product, but in general for the construction industry. What do you see on the horizon? What are you hoping to help us get to as an industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think like everybody in every industry right now, you have to say the future is uncertain. Seeing what Nano Banana can do has been a little bit disconcerting. If you had asked me 5 years ago, I would have said more on the kind of, design to manufacturing pipeline and kind of integrating that. I still think that that is an interesting field and an interesting area to work on. But I do think that AI is going to be able to ingest a lot of the messy data that we have in architecture and do useful things with it much more than I would have expected even a year ago.
Yeah.
So I think you have to just kind of stay open-minded to the possibilities. And I think, if you look at what Anthropic, what OpenAI are saying is the future, so far, I think they've been correct, unfortunately, which is very scary. I mean, in the far future, their goal, their dreams of solving cancer, et cetera, like, I'm still extremely skeptical about that. But in terms of our trajectory, Sonnet, Opus 4.5, Nano Banana, Gemini 3, I don't use OpenAI tools so much, so I can't really speak to that, but very, very impressive for creating software, for now creating and analyzing images. Yeah, it's very interesting times. I think one thing that I always think about, I think Anthropic has, a few of their spokespeople have said this, but companies that are operating at the limit of what the foundation models can do now are going to really benefit because the models are just going to get better quickly.
Yeah.
This
is the worst it's ever going to be right
now.
Exactly. What you see, if you're unimpressed by AI now, just think it's the worst it's ever going to be.
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
It's both exciting and terrifying. I agree with you there.
Yeah. I mean, one thing, so there's a company called Handoff, and I think there are a couple of other companies that are doing similar things, which are AI-generated estimates, essentially, which fantastic use case for AI, because estimates it's an art. It's not a science, and it's often BS made up on the back of a napkin. And, it's always serves as a very useful baseline, doesn't always serve as an actual prediction of where the project is going to end up. This is all stuff that AI is great at. Now, what I'd really love for BuildPlus is for us to be able to provide useful data to train really accurate models for construction estimating. Now, you're always going to have some contingency, and there's always going to be external market forces, political forces that are going to shape the cost on a project, especially larger projects or projects that run for longer periods of time. But if we can provide data to improve those estimates, that's a huge goal for me. So, I think making a AI estimate generator is a great product. It's very within the capabilities, given the state of estimating, given the state of AI models now. But if we can produce even better estimates using AI, that's what I'd really like to see. Like using AI to improve the actual capacity for us to deliver our work on budget, on schedule, rather than just reproduce what exists today, which is very messy, kind of vibe-based estimates, which is the reality. It's very difficult, don't want to blame anybody for it, but that's what, it's kind of like estimates are slop now. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
At the moment, construction estimates are slop. AI is very good at producing that, and it's a great fit. Hopefully in the future, AI will help us produce better estimates.
I love that potential future. How do you want people to find you? What do you want to plug?
Just want to plug BuildPlus. You can reach me at my name, Nicolas at buildplus. And we're really looking to talk to anybody who might want to deliver projects or have their project delivered in a more collaborative way, hopefully using Cost Plus, hopefully using BuildPlus. We really want to be the place to deliver cost plus projects. And, we offer tools for fixed fee projects as well. There's a lot of the same issues, tracking expenses against, project fees. But we're really focused on cost plus. We think it's a great way to run and using BuildPlus will make it much less onerous.
Yeah, love talking to people who really want to serve the industry and the projects we build. So appreciate you, Nick, and I'll check in every once in a while. Maybe we'll do an update in a year or something, see how big you've gotten.
Cool. I really appreciate it, Seth. Thank you so much for having me on. And likewise, I love talking to people like you who want to improve the industry and and are creating this kind of a platform. I've loved listening to your podcast. So
thanks.